censorship is only going to continue, I think. Currently we have this case with Joe Rogan. He made episodes with people that were kind of critical of a few things about COVID-19. And now his back catalog got kind of edited and all the kind of controversial episodes were just taken out. I think 20, 30, 40, something like this. And also newer episodes where they talk about COVID-19 now have a disclaimer on them. So now the question is, where does it start and where does it stop? Because Spotify, if on the side of Spotify, so the platform that actually took down these episodes, because Joe Rogan has a public deal with Spotify, not a public deal, but a deal, an exclusive deal. So the question now is, what responsibility do platforms have? On the one side, we have people that are kind of voting for, when it comes to the elections, for example, voting for more censorship, like limiting your ability to say something negative about another person online, which is often called hate. Of course, there is a question when something becomes hate and when something is not hate already. If you say, for example, I didn't like the talk, this TED talk about this person, then obviously it's kind of a factual based critic. If you now move it a little bit more into, I didn't like the way he presented it, then it's already a little bit more into the direction of maybe getting personal. Then if you now say, I didn't like the way, not the way he presented, but the way he talked, then it moves the line further. If you now say, I didn't like the way he presented himself, it's basically even more. It's not just about the talking, it's just about the whole thing. And now, the more you move into the space of, into his personal space basically, the more people tend to get offended, because these are things people actually care about. For example, if I say I don't like your nose, then the nose is something you cannot change, so the other person cannot change. And therefore, so for example, the way he presented is something that is kind of based on work, where you can actually put effort in, and maybe the presentation was just not that good. But someone cannot really have responsibility for the way they look, at least up to a certain degree. How high someone is, or how tall someone, not how high, how tall someone is, this is kind of out of your range of responsibility and also out of your range of possibility, because you cannot just grow taller or shorter. And the more something is invaluable by a person, the more, so you cannot, of course there is also a correlation with how much a person or someone cares about these things, these characteristics of what make a person the person. But what also is interesting is just now how we as a human civilization deal with these problems. Because where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line in between all those characteristics? So now, for example, if you cannot talk about certain characteristics of people anymore, because people get offended by these characteristics or group people by these characteristics, which often is really controversial, and of course also has a reason for it to be controversial, because in an ideal world everybody would have the same exact opportunities, but that's just not the case. There are differences, and to the matter or to the extent where these differences become apparent or become apparent in the way we interact with the world, or how we are able to interact with the world, in this way, so I have to stop here because I cannot end the sentence properly because it just got this long. And sometimes when speaking, long sentences actually also need to be closed, which, well. So now, the idea is, what do we do about these things we call free speech or statements online? It's not online. Online is not something that is actually existent anymore, I think. If you write something on the internet, it's not online, it's public. The internet is now the best, the most direct, the fastest way of communication between two people. Apart from, of course, you can still meet people face to face, But there are these costs attributed to this, because the better technology gets, the better the internet also gets in simulating what human interaction actually is, the more we can remove the external costs that are connected to meeting someone in person, like being able to drive there, being able to be at the exact same point when it comes in time, for one, but also in geography, basically on the map. Not only on the map, but also in space. So think of, in the future, maybe you want to meet the person, but the person is on Mars, or on Ceres, or somewhere else, or out of the solar system. So I think it becomes clear that we have to manage these things somehow, because because it just is, and these things just happen because people are still people, and not AIs or a higher version of people who don't talk bullshit about other people anymore. And I just use this word just in order to display this whole thing a little bit better, I guess. But usually I try to avoid things like these, words like these. So I find it very interesting how the space is evolving, because the more censorship there is, the higher the risk, if you actually say something in public, that this will be used against you at some point. James Gunn, for example, who directed not the Galaxy, but what is it? Guardians of the Galaxy. Galaxy is so weird because it's the Galaxy itself. It's also Samsung Galaxy. Ford also has a car which is called Galaxy. Galaxy is a weird word. So as a final statement, the more technology allows us to speak out in public, the more it becomes clear what people say, the more data there is on people. And we are actually still kind of in the beginning of even finding out what people even think all the time. There is one recent example. So I'm currently listening to a book which is about data science and about data science based on Google search, basically. At least that's the current point, the current chapter. And in there, the author states that on Google, people are just much more honest than in real world conversation. Because in the real world, basically everything you say runs through a social filter. And this filter filters everything out you think of as not really worthy, but you filter out all the things that you think are probably best left out. And if you now leave out this filter, you can actually see or analyze what people actually are thinking, and not just what they say they are thinking in a social environment. Because from the moment on we interact with another human, we apply the social filter. And therefore, I think it becomes apparent more and more that people are actually much more, much more than what we thought they are, because the filters are removed. For the one part, the social filters are actually now also applied to all of these platforms, have to be applied, maybe. And for the other part, so the other side of the coin, is that because we interact with machines more and more, and not so much with humans anymore, humans are just more honest these days than probably ever before.